Yep.
Hi
Hello.
guys, so welcome to our Google Hangout to discuss Giovanni's Room. So this is the book we're going to be discussing today, and right at the beginning we're going to discuss, wow, okay, we're going to introduce ourselves and then we're going to say whether we liked the book and what we liked about it, and then we're going to go into a spoiler discussion of specific topics. And if you guys want to comment or leave us any ideas in the comments, we will be checking the comments and incorporating them into the video. So as you guys know, my name is Ellie, this is on my channel, and now everyone else will introduce themselves.
Hi guys, this is Adira from the Young, the Broken, the Bookish, and welcome to our hangout.
Hi, my name is Chanelli.
Oh, hi, I'm Danielle, and my channel is One Small Paw. And are we supposed to say whether we not liked it or not?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I guess I'll just say whether I liked it. So I read this book a couple months ago, and I really, really loved it. I hadn't really heard of it before, and someone in a bookstore recommended it to me, and I went home and I started reading it that day, and I just could not put it down. I thought the writing was absolutely beautiful. I thought the themes discussed were really interesting, and I highly recommend it to everyone.
Okay, so I think I'm in the minority here, but this wasn't my favorite James Baldwin book, and I only read 3 so far, but I think he's like an amazing writer, but I felt like this book was a little rushed in the conclusion, and also I sort of felt like I didn't connect to the characters like I wanted to, but I think he's an amazing writer, just putting that out there.
I really like the book. I read it also in like a matter of a couple hours, so I really enjoyed it. I really like the themes. There's like a broad themes in the book that you could talk about, and yeah.
The first time I read it was about 7 years ago, so yeah, so I've had a long history with it, but I really love it. It's one of my favorite books, and that's about it, I guess.
So I thought now maybe we can each bring up a discussion topic that we want to discuss, starting with Adira.
Okay, so when we first start reading the book, we sort of like meet David, and David, we know in the book, goes through like a whole wide range of emotions and feeling with like his sexuality and the characters around him. But to me, it sort of seemed like David himself wasn't a reliable narrative because of the frustration that he had with himself and with being. But was his narrative actually reliable opposed to other people's narrative? And was he showing people like Giovanni and Hella, and I can't think of his rich friend or his benefactor's name, but was he showing them in a reliable light and in a true light? What do you guys think?
I think right off the bat it's already gonna be biased since it's from his point of view, and also we know from the beginning that he's recounting the story, so it's we're getting flashbacks and we get little moments of him in real time. So already that's already blurred.
I didn't really think he was an unreliable narrator necessarily. I mean, just as much as anyone is, I don't think he's um, any more unreliable than some narrators in different books where they're actually actively lying to the reader. Um, but yeah, so that's, I mean, I just think that he's trying to tell the story as honest, as truthfully as he can. But we all tell lies, I guess, in some way, shape, or form, and it's the truth as he sees it. So it's going to be different than what Giovanni's truth would have been.
I think I agree with what everyone has been saying so far. I think that obviously we're getting the story from his perspective, so it's the way he interprets everything that's going on around him. And I really I don't know what else to say apart from the fact that it's just obviously from his point of view, and I think maybe he could have maybe painted himself in a way different than how he actually acted in order to maybe excuse some things, but from what I could tell, it seemed pretty honest just from his perspective. I didn't see it as being overly lying about the way events took place, the way that some narrators do it in other books. Because some narrators, you know that what they're saying is wrong because you have glimpses of reality. And I never really saw glimpses of reality through the book, so it just seemed to be pretty evenly biased, but still quite truthful. Although I wish I had learned more about Hela. I feel like we didn't really see from his perspective much about his relationship with Hela, and I think it's maybe because he didn't really want it to take such a prominent role in his story.
And I think that's kind of interesting because it seems like the way their relationship or the love triangle in the book is set up, that we would have got an equal amount of Hela as well as equal amount of Giovanni, or David's interaction with Hela as well as Giovanni, because it seems like the main focus of the book, I know it's called Giovanni's Room for a reason, but it seems like it's really just like him and Giovanni. And I guess I asked my question because it just seems like David is one of those characters where, because he's so frustrated with himself, like he sort of shines the light of frustration onto other people, where like he talks about, I keep forgetting this man's name, but like the rich man who's his benefactor, he talked about how he was the kind of man where the men he was interested in weren't really interested in him and they just used him. So he made them seem just like he was a character who just went looking for men at the end of the night. Then he made Giovanni seem so needy. So I just wonder if everybody in the story was as frustrated as they seemed, or if it was just sort of like Baldwin trying to infuse the story with this sort of like angsty narrative, if that makes sense. Or did I just read it wrong? Thank you, Jacques. Thank you.
I don't know. I didn't really feel like, I think I'm in the minority here. I don't really feel like Hela needed to be shown any more than she was. I mean, she was gone, physically, gone,
Yeah.
for most of the book, or most of the time that he was with Giovanni anyway, which, that there's a reason for that. But, it's not really about her. It's obviously it's David's story, and even Giovanni isn't in it so much, but he sort of haunts the story. I don't know, and I understand what you're saying. Like, it does seem like in a typical love triangle, I would expect that, but I feel like this isn't really a love triangle because I don't know if David really loves, he doesn't even love himself, so could he really love Giovanni or Hela?
Right.
So, I don't know. So it didn't really feel like Hela not being more of a presence in the novel felt weird. It didn't. At least not to me.
Okay.
Can I say something, or I don't?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just thinking about that, about Hela, and how at first, when I first started reading the book, I thought that she would have a much more prominent place in the novel because I really thought it was going to be a love triangle. But then I'm not sure if we can even call it a love triangle anymore because Giovanni seems to be, David's problems and David himself seems to be the main focus of the story, and then Giovanni kind of helps bring out other things in himself. And I don't know if it's Giovanni as a person that's important, but just what Giovanni helped or didn't help David do to understand himself, that really. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it seems like the characters aren't really real to me. I felt like Giovanni was more an aid for David to realize certain things about himself.
Right.
Although with the ending, I don't know.
I can definitely see that because I remember there was the part where David makes the comment that Giovanni will always be prominent in his mind because of sort of like the feelings he unlocks or in his sexuality for years to come. And I guess I can totally see how Giovanni could be like a semblance for David's sexuality in the book.
should we move on to the next question, maybe, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Since we realized that the women are not that, it's mainly the problem I mainly had was their views on women, where certain parts for Giovanni was like, well, women, they need to be put in their place, or he has no problem maybe like abusing a woman. So that's where I have had problems with it. Or like the different ways, like when David would use women, like that one moment where he just randomly just sleeps with a girl, and then afterwards he like feels guilty about it, or like not really caring so much for Hella. She's just like his beard, I guess.
Yeah, I understand. Like, definitely Giovanni's views on women are problematic, and I guess you can say that David has some kind of weird views on women as well, since he does treat Hella, badly. But I feel like he treats Giovanni equally, and
Yeah.
sometimes, worse. So I don't know. Oh, so what? Sorry, what exactly is your question? Is it that, you know, um, what was the purpose of them treating women badly? Was that one of the questions?
I guess it was more of like a comment
Oh, okay.
on like just their thoughts on women. But I guess maybe it was a time period. Maybe it was because he didn't have a female figure since he didn't have his mom. So maybe that contributed to it.
Could it be that because society expected him to be with women because he's a man, that he becomes resentful of women as being something he's supposed to want to be with but doesn't really want to?
Because throughout it, he's like, all right, let's try and find women to sleep with or whatever. Let's try, or he tries to be with Hella during the time when he like breaks it off with him, because he wants to be straight, but he knows that he's not. Like,
Yeah, because I feel like if you really don't want something, but you feel like you're forced into something, it makes you more resentful of it and more likely to be angry and kind of mean to that, like, the person. And I don't know, personally, I found that Giovanni was, I really didn't like Giovanni personally. I don't know if we're supposed to like him or not, but whenever I would read something he said about women, it would just kind of annoy me a lot. And
Yeah.
I didn't really like him, but I understood why he was important in the story. But yeah.
I felt as if Giovanni's sort of like hatred or just like standoff nature with women was also sort of because he was sort of like in competition with the women that David was in relationships with. It was always sort of like, do you want them or do you want me? And it always felt as if Giovanni felt as if he was in sort of like I guess a lower position, because even though they were in some type of relationship, he never felt as if his place was solid and secure. So like that moment where he met Hella was sort of like odd to me, because I think he was very cordial, but you could tell that like he was hurt in that moment. So it felt sort of like strange in the sense that Giovanni was this character who was supposed to be the main person, but he always had that shadow of Hella, even though like he was a shadow himself in the narrative. Sorry, did anybody else have anything else to
So
say?
I was actually going to agree with that. I do think that, yeah, you made a good point that I think Giovanni's disdain towards women is because he is jealous of Hella and the fact that David does still sleep with women, where, Giovanni is sort of, you know, I think I think he does sleep. He has slept with women in the past, but he is past that point in his life, and he sort of accepted his sexuality. So he sees it as being sort of childish. That I think in a way that David is still doing this and playing with these women's emotions, and he's kind of lashing out in the wrong way, which is sort of taking it out on the women when he should be confronting David.
Right.
And also, so there's a quote kind of talking about David's relationship with women. It says, uh, David at one point says, "Nothing is more unbearable once one has it than freedom. I suppose this is why I asked her to marry me." And I think that that's a good example of who David is. You know, the fact that he thinks that, you know, marrying her is taking away his freedom, and he wants that. He doesn't want to be free, because if he's free, then, you know, he's going to be with a man and all that. But so I think him sleeping with women, that stems from that. You know, he's it's like, in a way, sleeping with women is actually, I can't think of the word, like, you know, holding him back. Like, he wants that. He doesn't want to be free. He doesn't want to love Giovanni out in the open. So that's why he does it. And okay, I guess that's it.
Could it be also that because he wants to really conform to how he's, like, how society says he's supposed to be, how he's supposed to be with women? Well, like you said, it's kind of maybe a relief to him whenever he's with a woman, because even though it ties him down in this way that he doesn't necessarily want to be tied down, he does want that normalcy that society expects of him. So it's like he's happy to be playing the part that he's supposed to, even though it's not necessarily what he wants deep down.
Well, go ahead. Sorry.
I don't know. I think I just kind of tried to. Yeah, what I'm saying is I agree with you, basically.
Oh, okay. Well, you said that you think that he doesn't want to be, like, tied down, but I think that's the whole point. He does, because he doesn't want to be free. That's one of the main things in the novel, is like, it's sort of, you know, not what most people would think. It's like counterintuitive. Most people want their freedom, but he doesn't want his freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I meant was that his urges, like what he deep down, what his sexual urges are.
Okay. Yeah.
Like that's what he, like. I don't, because, like, it's hard to say, because I don't want to say that's what he wants, but that's what his intuitively. That's what he. That's what I don't want to say wants, but that's what he kind of gears himself towards. But at the same time, what he wants to be is normal or act straight and stuff like that. I don't know if I'm making any sense. All I'm saying is I agree with you.
Yeah.
I was trying to, like, expand on that, but I don't think it really works. So yeah.
I get what you're saying, though, about how he wants something. I guess you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, that he wants to act on his feelings for Giovanni and other men, but the fact that society tells him no, that makes him not want to be free. Like Danielle is saying, where he just gets into the relationship with Helen. Is that what you're saying, or am I reading that wrong?
Well, I don't necessarily think it's. I mean, it is societal pressures, but I think it's also his own internal, you know, pressures that he's putting on himself. He doesn't want to, you know, be who he truly is. And one of the things that Baldwin always brings up in, like, every single one of his novels is innocence, and the loss of innocence being something that's really that's necessary but very difficult. And so I think he doesn't want to lose his innocence, and that also ties in with being American. But so yeah, like, he doesn't want to be who he truly is, because it's, you know, it's vulnerability. He doesn't want to be vulnerable. He wants to be I don't know. I could say more about this, but I don't want to because I know we're going to talk about it later. So, yeah, what I'm saying is, yes, he wants to shut himself off. That's what you're asking, right? Yeah, by having affairs with women.
Right. And I think that's something that was interesting, because before you and Camille pointed it out, I didn't really sort of, like, connect those two things. Like, you know how you always see those memes on Facebook where it's about, like, people who are gay fighting for their rights against laws? I didn't connect that to the fact that this character was actually in a time period where there were laws against him being sort of, like, gay. So I always thought, like, his frustration came from the fact that he was a character that just didn't like himself, and he didn't like other people who were freer than him. So I think that whole topic that you brought up with Baldwin talking about innocence was interesting because I think he did a good job of showing how like the loss of innocence in this character was very frustrating to David's growth throughout the book. Are we done with this question? Or
Yeah, we can move on.
Yeah, we can move on.
Is it my turn or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know which one. I guess we could talk about the significance of David being American and Giovanni being Italian, and them both living in France. And okay, my issue, I guess, how much does that affect who David is and Giovanni is, and their interaction with the other people and their environment. Yeah, if you guys have any opinions, I could elaborate, but I don't know. But I'll just yeah. I mean, okay. I guess what I'm saying is that if David's American, so it's more free in France, but he is sort of has this, he's self-imposing these restrictions, and how does that affect him? Being around people that are different than him, and also have completely different culture, and then also Giovanni being an outsider, and then they're both outsiders. Is that one of the reasons why maybe they were drawn to each other? And Giovanni kind of points out the fact that David's American quite a bit, and what that means to David, and how David feels about everyone else around him because of his Americanness.
I think I have a counter question.
Okay.
To add into that, so it's not really an answer, but basically David is an outsider in France, and so is Giovanni, and so in France he's freer than he would be in the United States. And what I didn't understand is if he's trying to box himself into this unfree situation where he would be married to a woman, and even if it's against what maybe deep down he thinks could happen. Okay, I'm gonna stop saying that. Basically, if he's freer in France and but he doesn't want to be free, why doesn't he go back to the States and not be free there? That's what I didn't really understand. If he wants to be boxed in, why does he stay in a country where he's quite freer than he would be in his home country?
I have sort of an answer to that, I think. Mm-hmm. I think part of it does have to do, again, with the innocence. It doesn't really make sense. I totally understand that. But even though he can be free, and he can, live the life he wants, and he would be way more accepted there. I mean, obviously they're not totally accepted, but he would be more accepted there than he would in America. I think the reason why is if he goes back to America, he has to become an adult, and he has to actually get a job and stop mooching off his father. So that's part of it. He wants to be innocent and living in France and doing nothing and living off other people. So that's why I think he doesn't go back to America.
And also, I think it has to do with sort of in a place like America, when he goes back, he'd have to go back to a community who knows him as David, the straight man, I guess. In the case of the people in France, they don't really have a connection to him. They sort of just met him in a sense. So it doesn't really matter what they think of him in the long term. So it's he can do whatever he wants, and it won't really stick, and those people will just know him as this period of his life. But if he goes back to America and he sort of expands upon his feelings that he's sort of awoken with Giovanni, then it'll really be sort of a disclaimer that sticks, oh, that's that. I don't know what term they used in the book when he was so afraid of the drag queens, I think they were. So it's sort of like he doesn't want to be seen sort of like in the long term as he looks at the men who are sort of like actually out, as opposed to where he is, where he's still confused in that particular section of the world.
I think that makes a lot of sense, actually. I'm trying to see something.
Chanelli, what do you think?
I mean, he goes to Europe, so he gets to like escape who he really is the time he's there, because he doesn't have hello or anywhere else. That's why he freaks out when he finds out, oh, she's coming back, and he's like, I have to like shut it down, like go back to this life.
Right. So maybe Hella is sort of like his connection to the real world, I guess. Danielle, where you were saying like she's not really meant to be there in terms of like the long term, so she could be sort of like that thing that tethers him to his life back in America, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Do you guys think anything about Giovanni being Italian, like that having an effect on Giovanni?
I was wondering about that because it doesn't seem to say anything about Giovanni's background. He sort of like hints, I think, at the fact that he had a hard upbringing, but it doesn't seem like there's anything that tethers him to his Italian life. At the beginning, I thought the woman that David was staying in the house with, her and her husband, were like his parents, because the woman always talks about his son. So I didn't really know if Baldwin was hinting at the fact that like David had gone to Giovanni's mother and father, or if he was even in Italy at the time. So I can never really figure out what tethered Giovanni to his lifestyle, or if he just fell into it by happenstance, because he talks about like having to have benefactors.
Yeah. I can't remember how he gets to France, but I did kind of want to touch back on him being, they're both being outsiders and sort of what they represent. So David's supposed to represent like white America, and Giovanni's supposed to represent black America, and I think that's why, in a kind of weird way, Giovanni is Italian, but rather than being French, because that does matter. And even though like we don't get to know a lot about his background, it does matter that he is also born in France. So it is kind of weird and it's very subtle, but that's, like David is supposed to represent white America and Giovanni is supposed to represent black America.
I find that really interesting. I didn't realize that before, actually. I had no idea.
Yeah, it's very subtle, but that's what Baldwin intended. So I thought it was interesting, and that's why the whole thing, with Giovanni dying in the end and being, killed, is that's what he believed was sort of, and it's kind of at David's hand in a way, very, it's not directly, obviously, indirectly, but just by how he treated Giovanni. Yeah, so that's why Giovanni dies at the end. Because I don't know if any of you guys had that question, but I remember that people in the Goodreads were sort of like wondering why Giovanni was killed and what was the purpose of that.
Right.
So that's why.
Okay, because I thought that ending was sort of like abrupt. It seemed like, I don't know, like there was so much emphasis on like rushing Giovanni to the guillotine, and it didn't seem like his actions really warranted it, because of like, I guess I was thinking in modern terms, because it seemed like the man who owned the bar sort of like came at Giovanni and sort of like pinned him into a corner, so his actions were like in self-defense. I was thinking along those lines. So when they were like, he's going to the guillotine, it's like, why is it that this large act is or this large punishment is coming about just for what he did? I know he killed him, but
I mean, yeah, it was definitely self-defense.
yeah.
Um,
Could it be to show the injustice? It's
Yeah.
not really. It doesn't seem very just to be killed because you defended yourself and that resulted in your attacker's death. So
Yeah, that's why it's like very relevant even now. Like we already know with the news with like with Ferguson and that. That's why it's like very relevant.
yeah. So yeah, and you also have to think about when this was written, what was going on in America at the time. Obviously, it was the 50s, so a lot of that was happening. Um, yeah. So I had something else to say, but now I totally forgot. So oh well, it's gone.
but I think now, because you mentioned about how David's supposed to be like white America and Giovanni's black America, I think it makes sense that he would come to such an unjust end then. It could be a reflection on what was happening in the States at the time,
Yeah.
like you guys said. So I think that makes a lot more sense in my head now, because I also didn't quite understand towards the end why everything happened so quickly. I didn't have time to adjust to it in my own reading. I couldn't process it the same way, but now it kind of makes a lot more sense in my head.
Well, I mean, a lot happens at the end. Like he's outed, and then and then Giovanni dies, and that's two kind of major things that happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was right. Did you think of the Black America, White America thing, or did you read that and maybe did you read that somewhere else, or?
Oh, I did think that, and then yeah, I did read it somewhere else.
Okay, cool. That's really cool. Should we move on to another question, or should we continue?
I think it's your turn.
Oh no. Okay. So I have a really weird specific thing to bring up, and it comes from a quote towards the end of the novel. I think there's another quote earlier on, but let me just find it. Okay. I feel like Giovanni's room, so the room itself represents something important. So there's a quote here that says, "Perhaps I didn't know it then. I only knew I had to get out of Giovanni's room." And Giovanni's room seems to be his true self. So not his true self, but it represents something that he didn't like about himself. And it seemed to represent something. And I was thinking maybe we can discuss what Giovanni's room itself represents, because obviously it does take quite an important role in the novel, because the novel is called Giovanni's Room, and there is quite I would say an interesting part of the novel takes place in that room. So I was wondering if you guys had any thoughts about that.
I sort of feel like Giovanni's room itself represents a safe for him, but in the small part of Giovanni's room, he's not being judged for his emotions and for, I guess, his sexuality. But even in the broader spans of the bar scene that I guess is supposed to represent the gay community in France, that Giovanni isn't being played, not Giovanni, but David is not being allowed to act upon his feelings, and the people sort of like come up to him and they're all taking bets, and he says earlier in the novel, like, they all know, or they're placing bets on whether or not we will or won't get together, paraphrase much. But in the case of Giovanni's room, it's sort of like this is a space where nobody's there to judge him, and nobody's really there to tell him he can or he cannot act upon his feelings. So I just look at it as a safe haven.
Yeah, I agree. It is like, again, going back with the freedom and innocence themes, it's Giovanni's room represents freedom, and which is, it's sort of a twist, because you would think that in, a confined space would be, obviously the loss of freedom, it would be enslavement, and yet that's here it's the opposite, where if he leaves the room, he's going to revert back to being the the innocent David, and in the room he can, shred his innocence and be free, and he doesn't want that, so that's why he has to escape Giovanni's room. And obviously the room can sort of be looked at as coming out of the closet as well in a way, even though it's sort of again like reverse. Going into the room is coming out of the closet, and being outside of the room is staying in the closet. So.
What was that?
I don't know, I heard something.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Okay.
I can't tell where it's from though. My bird is making noise also, so you might be hearing that.
Okay.
Did we answer your question? Or
Yeah. Wait, I just have something to add. I thought that was really interesting how what you guys pointed out about how his room is, on the one hand, it's like a safe haven and it's acceptance, but at the same time, he really wants to get out of there because he can't seem to accept how he's being accepted. So it seems counterintuitive, but to him, like you guys said about how he doesn't want to be free, he wants to be in that box that he feels he should be in. So the room, by giving him all this acceptance, is the opposite of what he really wants. So I just find it interesting how James Baldwin brought that into the story and kind of made something seem counterintuitive, but it makes a lot of sense when you look at David's personality itself.
Chanel, were you about to say something before?
No, yeah, it's a representative of them, having their own space and being free, but also later on in the novel, he talks about feeling caged in the room, and how, like, different moments where you hear Giovanni talking about wanting to build, like, a bookshelf or, like, expand it, and, like, how after that, he just wants to, like, leave, because I guess he doesn't want to accept his, his own feelings.
Yeah, I think that's like, Giovanni sort of making it more like a home for them is like,
Yeah.
it's like that fear of commitment type thing. You're like, no, this is too much. It's overwhelming. I think that, yeah. So.
Yeah, also I think it's because he wants to, like, keep him, because when he starts to learn about Hella and learning that she is eventually going to come back, so in a way he's like, maybe if I do this, you'll stay and renovate, but yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
It is kind of like, I mean, Giovanni isn't like this perfect character, obviously. I mean, even Ellie said she didn't really like him. I mean, I like him, but, he has insecurities too. He is trying to, he's almost trying to force I mean, he's trying to, like, shred David's innocence from him, but he's doing it in such a way that it's too much for David, and in some ways he kind of pushes him away. It's like one of those things where it's sort of, think about addiction, where people they can go to rehab, but it's not until they accept that they have a problem and they acknowledge that they're not going to do anything about it. That's kind of how I feel about David. It's like Giovanni's trying to be like, look, you're an idiot, and that's not gonna make David accept himself. He's just going to push back. And Giovanni sort of, I think he loves David so much that he doesn't see that's what he's doing. So, like, he is trying to trap him in his own way, but in his mind it's like, it's not really a trap because I'm trying to free him from this, this sort of imaginary, I don't know, I guess enslavement is kind of a harsh word for that, but it is sort of, he's enslaving himself. Yeah, I don't know, I think that's also why Giovanni acts like that.
I wonder though, like, this is something I wondered throughout the reading of the book, is whether or not Giovanni or Hella or even David actually love each other. In the case of Giovanni, it sort of seemed like Giovanni saw David as a means out of this hard lifestyle of going from benefactor to benefactor. I don't want to say pimp because I feel like that's just like wrong, but like benefactor to benefactor in his case of living off of other people. So like when he saw David, he saw, because David kept putting up this facade of having money that his father was going to send to him, he sort of seemed to see like a way out of his hard lifestyle and a secure means. So it seemed like to me, the way I was reading the book, that he was sort of like trapping him instead of just like showing genuine love and genuine concern for him. And like you say about the abrupt pushing of him out of the closet, it just seems like he was doing that more so for his own means and gains than sort of like for David's means of sort of like wanting to be out, if that makes sense. Am I the only one who felt like there was no genuine love?
Does anyone, or can I say something, or?
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't. I think that it depends how you interpret Giovanni's character. So if you view Giovanni as selfish or not looking out for David, you could interpret it as him not really loving David but using David. But on the one hand, I see where you're coming from, but I do think that Giovanni loved David. I don't think David loved him back. I don't know. But I do think, but I'm not 100% sure because I find Giovanni's character confusing to me. I found it hard to understand what his motives were and what he really wanted.
I agree. I think that Giovanni did love David, and I think David didn't love Giovanni. But I think David's incapable of love. So, in a different, he's, until he deals with his own issues, he's not going to love anybody. It doesn't matter if they're male or female. So,
Right.
but yeah, I do think Giovanni loved David. It's just, he is kind of a confusing character. He is complex, and I think that he's definitely, and that's one of the points in the novel, I think, because we only see it from David's perspective. We don't get to fully see Giovanni because it is really about David, even though it is called Giovanni's Room. So, but I think if we did know more about Giovanni, maybe it wouldn't be as confusing or ambiguous. But I think you can tell that he does have genuine love. Just he doesn't express it in the same way that you would expect, I guess.
Oh, were you saying something?
Oh.
I'm
Me?
sorry, the boxes keep switching, so I don't know if somebody's about to say something.
I was done, so sorry.
Okay. I don't know. It just seemed like throughout the book, for me, that Hella and Giovanni, because they weren't shown as much as you guys, like you all say, that you never really know where everybody stands. And at a point, like in the beginning, I really liked Giovanni's character, and like I was rooting for him and David, but then like Giovanni turned manipulative. So it's sort of just like it never clicked for me whether or not the love between them was real or whether or not it was put on. So I guess we'll disagree or agree to disagree on this point.
I can tell if someone else. I can never tell if someone else is about to talk.
I know, right?
Okay, so I see where Adir is coming from because the way that Giovanni expressed himself sometimes wasn't exactly the most straightforward way. I think that maybe Giovanni just didn't know how to tell David that he loved him. It's been a while since I read this, but I know that I do understand that Giovanni seemed quite manipulative throughout the novel, but I think that was just because he didn't know how to express himself properly enough to try to keep David without trying to manipulate. I think maybe that's the only way he knew how to go about doing things.
Oh, Chanel, were you about to say something?
No, I was just thinking about everything.
I was about to say, because my box keeps coming back to you, so I guess it's like a movement thing. But I don't know. I think there was one scene, was it that Giovanni actually says that he loves him? Or am I thinking of another book?
I'm going to look because I think I would have written that down.
Yeah, I can't remember. I thought he did.
But I thought in that scene where he says "I love you," that like he does it in such a verbose way or such like a in your face way that David's like, no, you don't, and like he just leaves him or whatever in the place.
Yeah, I think it was when they had that climax in the room
Yeah.
where he leaves.
Morning. Yeah, you're right, Chanel, because I think that's what I'm thinking about when they have that fight and like David storms out.
Uh,
Yeah, I don't remember where that is.
I'm looking.
I-
Oh, it's on. You have the vintage edition, so it's on 142. Well, I don't know where he says it, but that's kind of where it is. If you have this edition, then
Yeah, I have the older one from my
oh yeah,
mom's days.
I would like that one actually. I don't know. I can't like I'm trying to find it, but I think it's gonna take too
There's an
long.
interesting quote on this page though. Can I read it?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so he says, so I'm not gonna read the whole. I'm just gonna say what he says. But I'm a man, I cried. A man, what do you think can happen between us? I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
guess that's like his American viewpoint.
I'm a man!
Yeah.
Uh, oh well, Giovanni on on 141. Giovanni says, "Look what you've done to me. Do you think you could have done this if I did not love you? Is this what you should do? Wait, is this what you should do to love?" So I mean, he doesn't. I think he doesn't directly say I love you,
No.
but he's saying if David hurting him so badly is because if he didn't love David, he couldn't be hurt the way he was. And yeah, Giovanni's just not very good at expressing himself. I think he's very passionate and he's also very desperate. He wants to, he loves David so much. He's trying to cling to him. So that's why I think it comes off as almost like he doesn't love him because he's so desperate. It just seems like, when someone's really desperate, they act kind of crazy. So, but yeah. And I think he can also kind of see that when David leaves him, what's going to happen to him. That he's not going to be able to really function. I mean, they do kind of have a codependent relationship, but yeah. So. Or did you have something to say, Chanel?
Oh, no.
Oh.
Could I bring something up again? Or
Yeah.
it's kind of a bit different. Or do you guys want to continue talking about that? Or
Oh, that's fine with me.
okay, cool. I was wondering. I remember in the discussion that people were talking about whether they liked David or not. I think that was discussed in the discussion board. I was
Right.
just wondering what you guys think about David. Do you view him sympathetically, or do you view him kind of in a negative way?
No, I'm sympathetic to him. Because it's like the time period and it's like, like have his conflict with his own sexuality and it's like he's in a constant battle the whole time. And he's like, we already know from the beginning, he's like constantly deceiving himself throughout the novel because he doesn't confront it. Like us as the reader, we know, but he never confronts that aspect. So I sympathize with it.
I think.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
No, you
No,
were
no.
next.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think for me, I didn't really enjoy his narrative, and I think it's because when it comes to characters who are sort of like riddled with sort of like self-deprecation tactics and always been sort of like down on themselves or frustrated with themselves, I always want to see that point where like they grow and see growth throughout the story and see that turnaround point. And in the case with David, we never really get to see him turn around. We get to see sort of like driblets, but we never get sort of like that full head-on, okay, I'm gonna be comfortable with who I am, no matter what. And that's what sort of like steers me away from his narrative and steers me away from the book in general. And I guess I was just waiting for that one moment where he would stop being so like dramatic and actually admit his feelings for Giovanni and admit who he is.
Yeah, but that's so hard for him to do that.
I know, and I felt so bad because I just couldn't with
Maybe
him.
it's because you're like in the opposite side, because you don't do with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I guess, but it's just like, ugh. I just felt so bad for him. I wanted
Yeah.
him and Giovanni, like, I wanted him to rush in on the white horse and save Giovanni. I was like, no, you can't let him hang. You can't.
Yeah. I feel like I do like David. I agree with Chanelli. I feel like I feel bad for him, and he's almost like a child in a lot of ways, which I guess is sort of, rude to say, but he just doesn't really get it, and I kind of feel like, he's so self-sabotaging, and I don't know, something about him though. I feel like you said, he just can't do it. He can't, and that's why it's sort of frustrating, because I think a lot of us, we think, oh, I could do it. I could just push myself to, grow up, but he can't, and that's just who he is, which is sort of sad. And that's kind of why I feel bad for him, because he's going to live in his own hell for maybe the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And it's like it's his own punishment, the way he treated Giovanni and Hella and everyone else.
Right.
So that's why I don't really feel like I dislike him. I know I dislike a lot of his choices, but I do like him as a character.
I guess that's what I should say. I dislike him as a character. I dislike his choices, not his character. Because I felt bad for like what happened to Giovanni. Hella not so much, but definitely Giovanni. But I feel like Hella was just there because she didn't want to leave either. Or leave the relationship, and she didn't want to say it was over. But like Giovanni, I feel bad because like his whole little fiasco at the end is just sort of like, if only David could have, or not even David, but just like even Giovanni, Giovanni seemed like he was in denial as well by the end of the book. So if they could have just woken up, maybe. But I guess like you're saying, I can see where you say it's hard for him to admit his feelings because of the time period and because of what he would have had to face in that case.
I feel like, so I said earlier that I didn't really like Giovanni, so I kind of want to add something to that. It's not that I don't like Giovanni. I feel that parts of what Giovanni did kind of rubbed me the wrong way, but at the same time, I could sympathize with both characters and what they were going through. Because with David, I think that it's so hard to accept yourself for who you are, and I think especially for him in the time period that he was growing up in and just everything that was going on around him, it made it even harder for him to understand himself and to accept himself. I felt like he just hated himself so much, and it really made me sad. I just felt really bad for his character, and so I could really sympathize with him. I think that there's always something about just looking at yourself. There's always something you can't really accept about yourself, and while it may not be as big as what Giovanni had to deal with, it's still I think it's human nature to sympathize with what he goes through. But sometimes what he did really bothered me, and I kept thinking to myself, oh, you're just sabotaging your life. But I think he was just not ready. I think it was Danielle that said he's just not ready to do what Giovanni wants to do, and I don't think anyone could force him to be ready. It's something he's gonna end up. I imagine him waking up one day when he's 65, and Hella has recently died, and it'll be like one of those movies. Wasn't there a movie a while ago that came out about a man whose father recently came out as gay on his 60th birthday?
Yeah, it's called Beginners.
Yeah, I feel like that would happen to David. It would take him a long time to find out who he wants to be. And then because of that, I felt really bad for Giovanni, because I felt like Giovanni, in his point of view, saw David and saw his potential. and saw that he really wanted to be with Giovanni deep down, but in Giovanni's point of view, because it couldn't happen, it was so frustrating for him that it kind of made him hysterical. Not hysterical, but it made him a bit, what's the word that you guys used? Someone used desperate. It made him desperate because he could see it working out, but it just didn't work. It just couldn't work. So that was a big mash of things. So yeah, basically I just felt bad for everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
Although, I don't know, Hella just didn't seem real. I didn't feel like she was a real person.
Yeah, we only got like snippets of her. So
Oh, keep going, Chanelli.
I guess that we only had like little bits of her. So I guess that's why she's not, like, we don't really think like that much of her.
Right. I think for me, what I wanted to bring up earlier when we were talking about sort of like the viewpoints of women, it always seemed so odd whenever Hella opened her mouth and gave like this
Yeah.
big speech about women and how they should be sort of like with their man, because it was like those words didn't feel like, I don't know, they didn't feel true to her character. She felt like a mouthpiece, and I didn't know what Baldwin was trying to get at when he gave her these long speeches to give, because it didn't seem like that was her character, especially when you paired it with her actions of sort of like going away from her husband and sort of like trying to be free, or going away from David and trying to be free and sort of like experiencing life on her own, and then she would come back and say, my place is with my man, my place is with my husband. And it's sort of just like, what is your character's point?
Or maybe it could be back to that like American ideals of like what men and women. Maybe that has to do with it.
I think, like what you said, like how everyone is sort of, well, with the exception of I feel like Giovanni is sort of the only one that's kind of like true to himself. He's always who he is. He never
Right.
pretends to be anything else. Like, yeah, he's desperate, but he's really desperate, you know.
He
Like
owns that
everybody,
desperation.
Doc and Guillaume, I think that's how you say it, Guillaume. Right, Ellie? You
Oh,
say,
Guillaume.
okay, yeah. He, like,
But I don't know, it depends on your accent. Like, if you're French, it sounds different.
oh, okay. They're all like playing, and Hella too. They're all playing parts. They're all only showing a part of themselves and lying to themselves somewhat. And I think Hella, why she makes he's like not acting the way she says she feels, is because, you know, she's a hypocrite too. Like you said, she's like, oh, I belong with a man and you're my husband and all this stuff. But yet she's going off. I forget where she goes. Did she go to
Spain.
Yeah. And
Exactly.
it's like she's a hypocrite too. She doesn't actually believe that. She wants to be able to do whatever she wants, but then be able to have that traditional lifestyle, or to look like she has a traditional lifestyle of a loving husband. But she kind of wants her own freedom. And I think she's one of those women that, you know, like, I think that's what he was trying to paint her as, like a woman that, or a person, you know, that, like, says they want one thing, but they really don't want that, and she, like, purposely finds guys that she knows won't give her that, like, give her what she says she wants, but will give her what she actually wants. So it's in some way like she says at the end she kind of felt like she knew that David was gay. Well, she doesn't say it like outright, but she felt like she knew something was up. And I think she wanted that. She wanted to be with a man that had his own issues and would let her do whatever, because he was so busy trying to hide his true self that he was like, yeah, go ahead and leave and go to Spain so you can do whatever you want. And yeah, I don't know. I think she was just basically another person that was lying to herself, and they're all just liars. And like within themselves, they're just lying about who they really were. But yeah, I actually kind of I like Hella. I think she's sort of, I like that she's like that too. She's kind of, you know, yeah, she's not the greatest person in the world. I don't really feel bad for her though. I think that she was gonna be fine when she left David. She was just gonna move on, and And I also got the feeling, like, I don't know if anyone else got this feeling, but I kind of felt like she was cheating on David in Spain.
Yes.
But maybe that's just me.
Sorry. I thought so. Sorry. I thought so too. Like, I thought she was, even like to go one step further, I thought that like she had questions about her sexuality as well, because it always seemed like she was putting herself in the position of like another couple, and whenever she talked to David about the people, it seemed like she was too gun-ho to talk about these people, and it was sort of like, if you're a single person on a trip, why are you off with a couple that you don't know, if that makes any sense? So it seemed like, to me at least, that Baldwin was hinted at sort of like her liberation came through not just sort of like being with a man or just like being out on her own, but also sort of like exploring her sexuality in another way as well. So like I was never really clear if I was reading too much into that storyline or if anybody else was getting that sort of feeling as well.
Well, maybe she's like, sorry, she's like an independent woman that's trying to pretend that she's, wanting to, like the housewife. Like, you're supposed to be a housewife at that time period, particularly in America. And so she's like, I don't want to be a housewife, but I'll pretend that I want to be a housewife. But really, I want to be able to travel Europe and, have relationships with, several people if I want to, or nobody at all, and do what I want to do. So maybe that's why she seeks out people like David who will allow her to do that and not judge her for that and not be upset when she doesn't sit at home, and act all dainty or something, because he doesn't really care,
Right.
I think in that way they're kind of perfect for each other. Not perfect, but I mean at the stage that they both are in their lives where they're both kind of lying about who they really want to be, at least they're lying together instead of, like, I feel like if Giovanni, wrong person. I feel like if David ended up being with a woman who was really, really into him and like really in love with him and wanted to be this maternal / wifely figure in his life, I think that wouldn't really work. I think that maybe what they want would kind of clash. But with Hella, because she seems kind of distant in a way, and she seems to be like playing into this role, they can both kind of pretend that this is working when it's not, and they won't, like, neither of them will confront the other about what's really happening. They can continue on in this weird way until something else happens. We can move on if you want. Or does anyone else, whenever like it shows that the little green thing, it keeps showing that people are talking when they're not talking.
Yeah, I think it does that. It just cycles through occasionally anyway.
Okay, because I keep thinking someone else is talking, but then I don't hear anything.
Does Google Plus pictures just show up on my screen? So I'm not sure if it's that or if it's just like cycling through like Danielle said. So are we going to our second questions, or are we going to stop?
We can bring up something else if you guys want. Oh, could we, I feel like I keep... Oh, wait, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Okay, I was wondering if we can talk about David's father, that kind of weird relationship going on there. If you guys had it. I kind of wanted to bring this up. I don't want to make it into a big deal, but I was just wondering what you guys thought about his father, and also about his first sexual encounter with that man or boy, I don't remember, towards the beginning of the novel, where he talks about that sexual encounter and the aftermath of that. Like, maybe can we like quickly talk about those two things?
Oh, yep.
Yeah, if anyone has anything to say. I don't really have much to say because I don't know what to think about. Like, for example, David's father, I don't know what to think about it.
I think his father is just one of those people has more money than problems, I guess. He kind of like, I don't know. He doesn't really seem to mind that much that he's supporting David when David is just feeding him lies, and I don't know. Both him and his sister are very odd characters, and at least from David's depiction of them. But I don't know. I think his father is just one of those guys. It's like, kind of feels like that he wasn't maybe the greatest father, and so he is trying to make up by paying for David's lifestyle, even though he kind of sees that that's not the best thing to do. Like, I don't know.
I agree, because I was going to say the same thing about the father-son relationship. From what David shows in the beginning, it sort of seems like that hatred that he has early on sort of gets not fed, but sort of gets pacified later on in the book when David keeps asking for money and the father sort of like stalls. And finally he writes him this note saying why he's stalling, and says, like, I don't want you to come home to nothing. And it seems like another type of father who has a sort of like close relationship with the son would stop him and just like not send any type of letter. But it seems like the father sort of has some type of guilt from the earlier relationship of when the mother died.
I feel like in terms of his first sexual encounter, I feel like throughout the novel he's trying to run from that he doesn't want to accept that, because he knows that reveals a truth in him that he just doesn't want to accept throughout the book.
Right. I think it's interesting too that even though he says that the encounter with Giovanni will sort of like always be remembered in his mind, that Joey is the one that he sort of like brings up later on in the novel before the relationship with Giovanni has even started. So it seems like it's more of a serious event in his life than he makes it out to be, or it is more of a serious event in his life than he thinks it is, like he said.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with that. The little thing with Joey, it doesn't seem like it's that big, but of course it is, because I think it's his first sexual experience with anybody. He says something about like he made up a story to Joey about being with a girl, but it was a lie, obviously. And so of course it's going to have an impact, particularly when you have your first sexual encounter and it's not with, when you're a man and it's not with a woman, and you're living in a time where that's not what's accepted. But yeah, I think he does kind of feel like, I forget what happens with him and Joey, but I feel like he like ignores Joey or something. Like he doesn't do something he's supposed to do with him too. So that's like another thing with Giovanni. Like his theme with men is that he doesn't, even though they're not men, they're like 13 or something.
Oh, you went out, Daniel.
Huh? Oh, did Adira say something?
I think it froze.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was trying to say something, but then it froze.
Oh, is it still frozen?
Yeah.
I'm back.
Oh no, she's back.
Oh, am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay.
Oh, you were saying something?
Oh, no. On my end, it looked like you went out, Danielle.
Oh.
I was going out. So, I wasn't saying anything besides. What were you saying?
Oh, I was just saying that I think like it's just the theme with Giovanni or David that he doesn't kind of do right by the men in his life, or like the way he treated Joey. I think he treats Joey kind of badly, or they just don't talk ever again. It might be like mutual, but oh no, he says, oh sorry, no, it says, I picked up with a rougher older crowd and was very nasty to Joey, and the sadder this made him, the nastier I became. So it's a theme with him. I gotta hold on 1 second. I'll be back.
Okay, see you soon.
just to sort of pick up where she left off, since she sort of like came with her idea of Joey being nasty to other people. I think it's interesting that, or David being nasty with Joey, that it's sort of like a repetitive thing with him. It seems sort of like odd, or Danielle, I was just saying that it seems repetitive, that, or like a repetitive habit that David has where he always pushes people away. So it seems like he sort of builds this wall around himself that even Giovanni, I guess I read him wrong when I said earlier that he seems manipulative, but maybe in a way Giovanni was trying to break through that wall, and because he had to get through so many layers, like his actions seem so much more than they actually would have been if he was with a willing partner. Does that make sense? About David's like exterior walls around himself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it's definitely a pattern, at least with those two, because it seemed to. I agree with what you're saying about it being repetitive, how he repeats the same kind of mistakes. But I think the difference is that Joey's reaction was different, I guess, than Giovanni's. Giovanni is obviously older than Joey was, and Giovanni maybe is more likely to want to fight for his relationship than Joey was, since they were so young when that happened.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously Joey's not gonna do anything because I think they were like 13, 14 or something like that. So he probably, he was just going to, I don't know. He's not gonna like, do anything. It's not like they were in a love relationship. They just had, they probably just had crushes on each other. But just like I think David's, and the fact that David even admits that he treated Joey badly, I guess is a good thing. He probably wouldn't have admitted that prior to being with Giovanni. He probably would just be like, maybe he would admit that he had a sexual experience with a boy, but he would have. That sounds bad. I mean, he was a boy too. He wasn't.
Yeah.
But he I think he would have. Well, actually, no, he wouldn't admit that because I remember that Giovanni said something where he's like, "This isn't your first time with another man," and because David lied about that and said that it was.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I forgot what I was trying to say. But basically, it's just interesting how he admits to being nasty to Joey, and I guess he is admitting to being nasty to Giovanni as well. That's the whole point of the book, in a way.
Yeah, because he's recollecting the story, so he says that he's like been staying in that room ever since that time, so he's remembering all that happened. So obviously it shows that he feels all the regret, and then there's that moment where it's present time, where I think the neighbor comes over and how he feels sadness because she asks him, "Oh, how's Hella doing?" And we obviously know what happened, and in a way he talks about how he wants forgiveness from her, but he's not sure why.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I like that. Sorry. I was just saying that I like that he feels that way. I think that's interesting. But sorry, go ahead.
Right. I just find it so interesting that over his life he always tries to recreate the scene. Like he goes from trying to recreate the relationship he had with Joey, like you guys said, to in the end of the book being in another room that's sort of like supposed to take the place of Giovanni's room. So it's just so interesting that David can never really sort of like come to terms with himself, and he like in the end of the book, Baldwin still puts him in this safe haven to sort of like guard his innocence or the little bit left that he has.
Yeah.
I completely forgot the ending, so now I'm on Wikipedia checking what it is. Like, I remember Giovanni being killed and stuff, but
Yeah.
okay, I'm just reading it now.
I think it was just waiting for the execution date or something.
Yeah, and then he gets the
Yeah.
notice from Jacques that Giovanni's been executed.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
But he's living, is it the south of France or something?
Yeah, south of France.
Yeah. Yeah, he was living there with Hella, and then she leaves when she catches him with the soldier. So he's a soldier, right? He's something. He's something in the military. He might be. I don't know.
I think he was a soldier, and I think it's interesting because doesn't he ask him the same question that Giovanni asked him, like, is this your first time or was there another? And David sort of like breaks down or something at that point. So it just seems like it's a recurring theme that David can never get it together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say. I think he'll. Do you guys think he'll ever get it together?
Possibly.
Maybe.
I stand by my idea that he would only get it together when he's 60 or something.
Yeah. There's something kind of interesting.
I think I'm on that same track.
Oh, what? Sorry, Adira?
Oh no, I was just agreeing with Ellie.
Oh, yeah, that he's going to be an old man. Maybe even married with kids or something, and he'll be like...
All of regrets.
But I was going to say there is, like, I don't know if you guys are interested in reading Another Country by James Baldwin, but there's two characters in there that are very similar to Giovanni and David. But, yeah, I don't want to give away spoilers, but they're very similar. And I think that they're basically, like, parallels. Yeah. Anyway. But did you notice that Adira? I know Adira's read it. Did you notice that too?
Yeah, I did notice that, and I wanted to ask you: is there ever a book that Baldwin writes where the two individuals actually have a healthy relationship where they're in the situation?
If Beale Street could talk, try that.
Okay.
No, he does have healthy relationships in his books, but...
No, I mean like a healthy, I guess, homosexual relationship, because it seems like in the three that I read, there's always some type of friction, and I don't know if he ever, Baldwin was ever able to actually write his characters the way he wanted to see them in real life.
Yeah, he does write. He doesn't. Okay, I mean, I don't want to give like spoilers from his books, but he's not all about. There's not going to be very many books that that are out there that he has happy-go-lucky endings. But yeah, he does have good. There are good homosexual relationships. I won't say which ones, but they do exist.
Okay, I'll keep reading until I find one.
I just wanted to say quickly that in September I'm going to be reading If Beale Street Could Talk with Steven from Steve Reads Books. So if you guys want to join in, we're going to read that in September.
Thank you for telling me. I'll definitely leave that one until that time then, because that was what I was about to read next.
This is also off topic, but has anyone read Going to Meet the Man?
Yeah, I've read pretty much everything, so...
Do you recommend it? Is it good?
It's really good. It has... Two of the stories are absolutely amazing. I mean, all of the stories are amazing, but two of them in particular are, like, my favorite.
Okay, another off-topic question. Is it the kind of book that you read all the stories one after another, or is it the kind of book where you kind of dip in here and there?
I read them one after another, but, you know, sometimes I do that, sometimes I don't. It just kind of depends.
Okay, I just wanted to check.
So do you guys feel like we discussed everything you guys wanted to talk about? Or are there any other questions that you guys want to discuss?
I can't think of anything else personally.
Okay, because my two questions.
I'm sorry. There is one thing that I think... Oh, Ellie, you had on your question was, like, the fact that they're all white. Did you want to...
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Okay, so I didn't realize they were white. Like, I mean, I realized Giovanni was white and all that. But I guess because I thought Baldwin would write David as a black character, so I never actually realized that David was white for some reason. So I think that it makes sense now with what Danielle said about how David is supposed to represent white America and then Giovanni is supposed to represent black America. I think then it makes sense that David's white. But at first, I guess I don't really know what my question was. It was more like pointing that out because I hadn't realized it and what you guys think. Do you think it brings something to the story? Do you think it doesn't really matter at all?
I thought it was interesting because, like you, I didn't realize until I was well into the second half, or I want to say the second or third chapter when I hit the switch to the audiobook, and like the audiobook cover has a white man sitting there, and I'm like, huh, I wonder is this a picture of the narrator? And then like I came on the Goodreads group, and you guys told me no, or Danielle told me this is actually, I think you said the one of the only books where Baldwin writes from a white perspective, and everybody was in an uproar. Is that correct, Danielle?
It's the only book that has all white characters, and then in the Going to Meet the Man collection of stories, there's one other story that has only white characters, but that's it. Everything else has, I mean, he has white characters in his books and stuff, but he always has black characters as well. But,
Right.
yeah, so.
I just thought that was so interesting because I always think about that old adage where they always say, like, write what you know, and it just seems so interesting. Like, Baldwin wrote these characters from a different racial standpoint than his own, because I had, like, this frame of mind when I went into the book that this character obviously had to sort of, like, be African American because of sort of, like, they had to be African American because of the sort of like struggle with internal, I guess, sexuality. Because I just sort of like thought in my mind, like I guess in the African American race, there's always that thing about like you don't want the black man to be gay because you don't like it's like a double hit against him. So my thought was sort of like if this is a Caucasian man, then he should be able to be sort of like freer with his expression. And then you guys pointed out the whole thing about the laws at the time. So I just think it was so interesting that when I sort of like put him into the frame of mind of a Caucasian, how much more real the struggle became because I actually got to see his frustration in a different light than if the character to me had been African American. Like, not saying that different races, the whole coming out process is easy for anybody, but it just seemed like in African American culture, it's sort of like such a socially wrong thing to be that this character, his struggle made more sense in that light as opposed to when it was like in the Caucasian standpoint, if that makes sense. Did any of that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know if I have anything to add. I don't think so. I think we kind of covered it. So.
Chanelli, did you always like know that the character was white, or did you just sort of like find it out by the end?
I guess I didn't really think about it when I was reading the book. I didn't think about it so much, but I thought it was interesting when you brought up that he did, that David represented white America and then Giovanni, that because I did not know that. So that made me look at it totally different way.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, everything James Baldwin did had to do with racism in some way, shape, or well, you know what I mean. Had to do with racism some way. So, yeah. He snuck it in there. I think he also briefly talks about the Algerians. It's just like a little mention, but at that time period, Algerians were being discriminated against, and I think they were being deported from France.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there is one little reference with that in there to that, but yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. That's the only hint that it has anything to do with race with that. So.
Does anyone have anything else they want to bring up, or?
No, all my questions were answered.
Yeah, same here. I think I brought up what I wanted you guys to mention, so I'm good.
Yeah, I think so too. But I feel like we hit everything
Yeah.
sort of in some way, shape, or form. We kind of. I like how you called Adira called Hella a beard. I was like, aw.
I feel like I wanted more from her storyline. I wish that Baldwin had wrote like a separate story just for her, just to sort of like see her journey to, I don't know if it's affirmation or confirmation, but just like to see her grow. Because I felt like she had a lot to say in her dialogue when you point out the fact that she's sort of like a hypocrite as well, just to like sort of see if she ever comes to terms with herself and what she wants out of life. That would have made a good book to me. Sort of like in Go Tell It on the Mountain, the parents, I felt like they should have gotten their own book and that book could have been much bigger if Baldwin had done a separate storyline about them as younger people.
He kind of does revisit some of. He always did that. He always revisited characters in some way, but in a different book. And there is a Hella-like character in another one of his books, and you definitely get to see what her journey is a lot more. So.
Which book is that?
Oh, it's Tell Me How Long the Train's Been Gone.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry, my dog's being annoying.
Aw.
There. Sorry.
So, does anyone have any concluding remarks they want to say, or anything?
Nope, except thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for coming to chat with us about the book. I totally appreciate it.
Yeah, I hope you guys all enjoyed watching this and enjoyed our discussion. Should I stop broadcasting?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Wait, don't hang up, you guys. I'm gonna stop
Okay.
broadcasting. Okay.
Okay.
Bye, guys. Okay.